Hi, what's happening? Y'all, it's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and we're putting together the last 2 days of Washington Commanders training camp practice of the 2024 offseason in one. Day 19 and 20, we're just going to go ahead and wrap them both up today. Just ended up super busy, so I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up what happened yesterday and today. Apparently, the Washington Commanders are shopping for receivers. Mike Sainristil is potentially playing at outside corner for us, not just in the slot. Jahan Dotson chaos and aftermath. We got to talk about all of that. Luke McCaffrey disappointing the coaching staff right now, and Frankie Louvu destined to make a Pro Bowl. We're going to talk about a lot of that stuff and more, but before we do, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Of course, just like every training camp practice breakdown, I will show y'all clips of what's going on in practice. We're going to break down every single position group: quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, cornerback, safety, and definitely stay tuned for special teams as well. And then I also have a few random updates at the end of the video as well that pertain to the Commanders and also sort of, you know, involve some of our division rivals or other teams out there. Whatever bad moments they're having, we're gonna laugh about it. So make sure y'all stay tuned all the way through the video, and make sure you pull up for Sunday's live stream of the Patriots' final preseason game for the Washington Commanders. And without further ado, let's go and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, and before we get into everything that actually happened in practice for the past 2 days, I got to give you some background info on some of the notable people that were there at the past couple of practices. Then we have an injury update. We also have a roster moves, and we're going to just give like an update on the Jahan Dotson situation, where we are going from there. And then also we made some more roster moves, like we cut a player and signed another player. And then, of course, we have to see what Joe Wood Jr., our defensive coordinator, had to say. Cliff Kingsbury, our offensive coordinator, has some things to say that are very interesting. Dan Quinn also has some very interesting quotables as well. Then we'll get to the actual practice. And again, just to remind you, this is a wrap-up of day 19 that happened yesterday, Thursday, August 22nd, and day 20 that happened today, Friday, August 23rd, all wrapped into one video. This is the final training camp, all wrapped into one final breakdown. Of course, I'm still going to be coming out with daily videos. There's so many other things that I've been waiting to talk about, but I've just been busy and been wrapped up giving y'all these updates from the training camp practices. I can't wait. But shouts out to Scott Abraham, who went to the final practice. Per usual, he goes to every practice. He's a Commanders media member. He tweeted, "Today is the final day of training camp practice for the Washington Commanders. It's been one of the best camps in my 9 years covering the team. The vibe, the excitement, it's very evident. The team has also been terrific, providing everyone on the beat great content and interviews. So this is just a great and really fun team to be around. I feel like Dan Quinn has a lot to deal with that, with the culture that they're setting up here. I love it. And we also just have great guys on the team, so that's really cool." Also want to point out the fact that this, again, is the very last practice, but specifically before we cut from 90 to 53 for the initial final roster that we go into the regular season with. So after today, all that these guys that are on the bubble competing for those last few spots, all they have is that final preseason game against the Patriots. That's it. No more practices. So they is put up or shut up in that final preseason game, where I'm pretty sure a lot of starters will not play. I don't think any starters will play. We're going to talk about that later on in this video, because Dan Quinn even addressed how difficult it is to even discuss this whole situation with the players, and like some people are not going to make the team, and that whole process and how bad that is. But he also, we're going to talk about it later when we get to the coaches and what they said part of this video. He also gave a clue as to how many spots are still open for this final 53-man roster. And like I said, Dan Quinn said that it's a hard conversation to have on cut day, but he does try to give feedback whether they're going to be on the practice squad or not. And that's, I appreciate him for that, at least for that, like that sort of heads up for players, like, hey man, you may stick around, you know, other teams may be looking at you, we don't think you're gonna end up staying here, things like that. That's really cool that he's giving those guys that insight rather than just being cold, like, you don't make the team, that's it. I also shouts out to JP Finley for pointing out the fact that obviously a wild day in Ashburn. This was yesterday after the Dotson trade, but a good spirited practice going on. And from multiple sources, people were saying that today's practice was very spirited as well. These guys are very upbeat. They're very excited about this upcoming season. They are not down about the Jahan Dotson situation at all. Pads on, very physical. NFL players know that anything can happen in this league, and they are moving forward as such. Also, Matt Ryan pulled up to the practice today. Of course, he played for Dan Quinn in Atlanta. They went to the Super Bowl. Of course, it was the 28-3 situation where, of course, me being the biggest Falcons hater, I love to bring that up as often as I can. Also, Capitals head coach Spencer Carberry was at practice, and he was at practice yesterday. So Matt Ryan yesterday, and then Spencer Carberry there yesterday as well. But then today, you had Sunday Night Football, Mike Tirico, and Chris Collingsworth there at practice today, as in the practice that went down Friday, August 23rd. That's pretty cool, man, that a lot of people are showing up and are very interested in what we have going on. I feel like Jaden Daniels is a big part of that, but Dan Quinn, new regime, Adam Peters, and those guys are also probably bringing more eyes to the team as well. And then, of course, shouts out to Mitch Tisler for updating us on who was the first person to hit the field. And this, he didn't give us which one happened today, but yesterday, day 19, the second to last day of training camp, it was Anthony Pittman that made it onto the field first out of any player, and that was his first time doing that all training camp, according to Mitch Tisler. And then also, shouts out to Resh Manuel for joking about this. He said Bryson Tremaine slides up the wide receiver depth chart and he's already getting complacent. I'm 100% kidding, of course, before rumors get started. Basically saying that Bryson Tremaine used to be the guy that was always there first. He had a couple of slip-ups, but, Resh Manuel was saying Bryson Tremaine out here thinking he's a star and he's too good for everybody to be the first person that practice. Basically, I thought that was pretty funny. Also, for the first time, the Commanders are finally utilizing their brand new grass practice field. The field used to be the AstroTurf field that was completely unusable. And again, just to remind you, this was a field that was just unusable for the past 20 plus years. And it was also the field that was the closest to the locker room and facilities. So players and coaches would have to pass over that field, walk through it to get to the fields that were actually usable that we've been using for the last 20 years. But now they can utilize this one as well. So now they have an additional field, and they made sure they actually used it. Like, I think it was a couple of days ago in one of those training camp practices that I broke down recently, earlier this week, that there were a couple of people running on it, but today I think they had the full-blown practice on it. So that's pretty cool. Now moving on to roster changes. Just to give you an update on the Jahan Dotson situation, just behind the scenes wise, Washington got the better of the Miami, Philadelphia third rounders because the Philadelphia Eagles had two. Philadelphia gets Washington's fifth rounder, the only one that we had. And then Washington gets the worst of the two seventh rounders between Atlanta, Denver, New Orleans, and Philly, because the Eagles had 4 first rounders before that Jahan Dotson trade. They gave us the worst 2, but they gave us the better of the 2 third rounders that they had. And again, we gave them our only 5th rounder. So now we have a first rounder, a second rounder, 2 third rounders, a 4th rounder, a 6th rounder, and 2 7s. Because remember, we had to trade a 7th rounder to get kicker Cade York. Of course, we're going to talk about him a little bit towards the end of this video when we get to the special teams part of this video. And then, of course, when I broke down the whole Jahan Dotson trade and everything like that, make sure you go check that out because we looked at it from every angle possible. Definitely go check that out if you haven't. I talked about the fact that Montez Sweat even tweeted about it and said never personal, just business. And then Jahan Dotson actually ended up retweeting that later on. Thought that was pretty interesting. And Karen McCurl also had something to say about it yesterday. He said ain't no way they let one go. So even Karen McCurl, even though he's no longer with the Commanders, he's even shocked by the situation. And then lastly, transaction-wise, roster move-wise, the Commanders signed center Cameron Tom and released center J.C. Hausenauer. I hope that's how you pronounce his name. I really apologize if I got that wrong. Now moving on to the injury part of this video. As far as the side field goes, during team 11-on-11 drills, you have Marcus Mariota, Dante Fowler, Cleveland Farrell, and Deron Payne. But do not worry, we're good to go. Cleveland Farrell dealing with a knee injury, and Dante Fowler will practice in full next week per Dan Quinn. They're good to go. Nothing to worry about. Also, no issue with Deron Payne either. Dan Quinn said that Deron Payne isn't dealing with anything that will linger beyond today. He's good to go as well. And then also, Sam Hartman is participated in the first practice since hurting his shoulder in the Jets preseason game. And so he even participated in team drills. And so that's really cool. So now with him being healthy again, The only question is, does he make the final 53-man roster, or do they try to place him on practice squad and hope no other team scoops him up before he reaches it? We'll see. But another update. Center Tyler Biadasz was not working out today. John Com said not sure the issue. Did not see him in late 11-on-11 work yesterday either. But he is out there. He's just chilling. So basically, to him, it sounds like a vet day. Nothing to worry about there as well. And then Johnny Newton is jogging on the side field during practices. So that's improvement. But that doesn't necessarily show that he's ready to go out there and play if we had a game tomorrow. But at least there's improvement there. Now let's see what the coaches had to say, because they had a lot of notable things. That's why we're talking about all of these things before we even get to what actually happened in these two past practices the past 2 days. Because there's some really interesting quotes. Like, first of all, Joe Wood Jr. addressed the media, of course, our defensive coordinator. He said he's excited to see the players who normally don't work with the first group, wants to see how they handle their opportunities. I'm really excited about that as well. With pretty much no starters playing in that preseason game against the Patriots, this is going to be interesting to see what a lot of these backups have to do, because I believe the Patriots will play at least one of their starting quarterbacks. Apparently, Jacoby Brissett and Drake May will play. So I wouldn't throw them out there to the Wolves like that. I would at least give them somewhat of like a starting O-line or something like that. So maybe the Patriots play a little bit of their starters, especially on offense, and we're going to go out there with pure backups, I'm assuming. So Joe Wood Jr. has a good point. Let's see if these backups can hang with some of the other team's starters. It may not necessarily be a good team in the Patriots, but still, they're projected to at least play some of their starters. Let's see how they match up against those guys. I'm really excited about that as well. Cliff Kingsbury also spoke to the media. He talked about Jahan Dotson, said that he'll basically defer questions to AP and Dan Quinn when it comes to that. But he is excited about what he's about to see from the rest of the room. He's excited about what we still have even after trading Jahan Dotson. And then as far as Jahan Dotson goes, though, the only thing he really did say was that he was a great kid. And again, he emphasized the fact that he really likes what we have in receivers right now, even with Jahan Dotson gone. He also said that he really likes Olamide Zaccheaus' ability to play inside and outside, slot, X, whatever you need, and he answers the bell every snap. That was an exact quote from him. Kingsbury also highlighted how hard the receivers play without the ball, and that's a key quality for the starting group. Wants to see them compete even if the ball doesn't go to them. And I'm not gonna lie, that sounds like a direct shot at Jahan Dotson. He tried to avoid sending shots at Jahan Dotson and speaking on him too much, but that one literally sounded like, well, now that Jahan Dotson's gone, what I love to see in my receivers are things that Jahan Dotson was not doing, which is a shot that Jahan Dotson deserves, but still a shot nevertheless. Also, Cliff Kingsbury calls it night and day, a difference between working with Jaden Daniels this camp and working with Kyler Murray in 2019 because of all of the NFL experience he's gained since that point. I'm pretty sure Jaden Daniels has something to do with that as well. He's probably an easier guy to teach because Kyler Murray was like a very specific type of guy that needed a very specific teaching style. Cliff Kingsbury and him, we all saw the reports that they clashed a lot and things like that. Cliff Kingsbury also had too much on his plate trying to be a head coach and having to oversee everything. Now he's just purely an offensive coordinator. And I do believe that he'll do a far better job this time around than he did with the Cardinals. Even though still, that boy Kyler Murray won Offensive Rookie of the Year, and then I think he went to the Pro Bowl the 2 years after that. It's not like Cliff Kingsbury didn't set him up for success, but either way. Then Dan Quinn talked after this final practice with Scott Abraham and talked about how it's not a rebuild, it's a recalibration. He keeps emphasizing that. He said, quote, that identity, that's where the recalibration is. The play style, you've got to get that right, unquote. So again, even if we don't necessarily love what our record looks like wins and losses wise, we're going to at least take away from this team by the end of the season. We like their play style. We like the culture, and we see some potential here to where we're building something great. That's the main point of this season. And Dan Quinn keeps making sure that he realizes that. And I'll keep wanting to emphasize that to y'all. Don't go out there and expect it. No matter even how good Jaden Daniels is, even how improved this defense is or improved this team is overall, other teams improve as well. It's not like we're the only team that got better. Now, granted, maybe we got significantly better than a lot of other teams, but I'm still not expecting us to go out there and just be a dominant force yet. This is still year one of a rebuild. We just traded one of our better receivers for draft picks. So not to say that we're planning on this season, but we're clearly more focused on the future of this franchise and what it takes to become a Super Bowl contender rather than what we can do to win as many games as possible this year. Dan Quinn also spoke on, and I mentioned this earlier, I gave you the foreshadowing on this. He's talked about that there's quite a few roster spots still up for grabs going into Sunday's preseason finale looming. Facing Brissett and May will be good for defensive players, good evaluations for the coaches. He said, I would say that there's still quite a few, less than 10, but enough that in the backup spot from different people. different spots and everything like that. And it's a way longer quote, but I really wanted to take from that the fact that we have almost about like 10 spots still available. So out of a 53-man roster, he's basically saying we have at least 43 down pack. We already know what we're doing there. Now there's 10 spots basically up for grabs, like at least 10, like somewhere around maybe a little less than 10. Quinn also said that Washington is pleased with the wide receivers and what they've shown so far, and leaving the door open for AP to find someone else who can compete, but he's not throwing out any tea leaves. And that was a big time sound drop from Dan Quinn right there, man, because to me that sounds like there's something definitely in the works. Now, is it necessarily like a Brandon Ayuk or something like that, or a T. Higgins? I'm not saying that, but this is further proof that they are definitely looking for something after trading away Jahan Dotson. They didn't just trade him away and just assume, okay, we're done here with receiver going into the regular season. They're definitely looking for other people. Then you have Ari Marov, who added further proof. He reported that the 49ers called the Commanders a few weeks ago when they were looking to trade their disgruntled wide receiver and Brandon Ayuk. Washington general manager Adam Peters was with the 49ers as their assistant general manager under John Lynch, of course, and was part of the draft process that led to them picking Ayuk. So, of course, he's very familiar with Ayuk himself and also the 49ers front office. The 49ers reportedly wanted Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin as part of the trade, and if he wasn't available, they wanted a first-round pick, and by the fact that we have not traded for Brandon Ayuk shows that they're not willing to give up Terry McLaurin nor a first-round pick. Now, we'll see that maybe if they throw in a second and then that third that we just got from the Eagles, maybe that helps. I don't know, but it sounds like they really want Terry McLaurin in return, which is understandable because they are in win now mode. Draft picks are nice, but you prefer the proven commodity in a Brandon Ayuk over a draft pick, so that's why they're playing hard to get right now, and they're asking for so much value in return. Peters wasn't willing to give that up either, and the 49ers didn't want Jahan Dotson as part of the deal. That's another important part of this. The 49ers were like, nah, Jahan Dotson is not somebody we want in return for this deal, so that just continues to show the value that Jahan Dotson had in the eyes of NFL front offices. They didn't value him as much as a lot of our fan base does. That's why Washington hasn't been on an Ayuk sweepstakes, despite him wanting to go there per Myrov. So Myrov did confirm that Brandon Ayuk does want to come play for the Washington Commanders. Washington has also been fishing around the trade market for another receiver. That's another big time drop right there. That's very important to note. The Commanders are looking for receivers. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's T. Higgins or CeeDee Lamb or Brandon Ayuk, somebody of that caliber, but they're looking around, and they're not just looking at free agents, they're looking at other teams' rosters. Dan Quinn also said of the Jahan Dotson trade, quote, "You always make decisions that are rock solid and best for the team. Everything is a factor. We thought we were deep in a strong group. We had a lot of different guys. At the end, it was an opportunity to help the team," unquote. Basically saying that Jahan Dotson, he was all right, but, you know, him being gone, we don't necessarily miss him that much. And then now let's go to the quarterbacks, man. First of all, Scott Abraham caught this clip before today's practice with Jaden Daniels was basically just showing off. Like an on-the-move, sidearm throw, on the money and everything beautiful. Here's that video right here, man. And then sticking with Jaden Daniels, Scott Abraham asked Dan Quinn about this whole sliding thing. He said he talked to Commanders head coach Dan Quinn yesterday, I believe it was, no, earlier today, about quarterback Jaden Daniels knowing when to slide. Dan Quinn said, quote, "You may see him dive more than slide. He's been educated on it. It's very important because his health is a big factor," unquote. And I thought that was interesting. The fact that he may dive more than he slides, I thought that was interesting. We'll see how that plays out. Dan Quinn also let us know and confirm that Jaden Daniels will not play in the final preseason game, which we all assume, but now there's like an official confirmation from the head coach himself. And even though Marcus Mariota has been practicing this week, he will not play either. So you'll probably have, I guess, Jeff Driscoll starting. Then you have Sam Hartman, then Trace McSorley. I'm assuming those are your three quarterbacks right there. And then now let's get to what he did in practice the past couple of days, starting with yesterday. Zach Selby said the offense started off slow on Wednesday with 2 pass breakups to start 11-on-11 drills. But yesterday, as in Thursday, however, things went much smoother as Daniels hit Luke McCaffrey in the end zone for a touchdown. Then Brian Robinson followed that up with a touchdown run. And then Daniels went on to connect with Zach Ertz for a score as well. And shouts out to JP Finley for pointing this out, because that specific Zach Ertz touchdown throw that we just mentioned, Daniels found Zach Ertz deep for a corner touchdown, probably 40-ish yards. Offense was hype. Zach Ertz punted the ball. Eckler fair caught it. Sam Cosmi kind of did a cartwheel. The whole offense was fired up. And if you want to see that play, here it is, provided by the Washington Commanders themselves after the practice. And then also, I mean, we're not getting a lot of information what's coming from these practices, especially from a guy like Jaden Daniels, where it's kind of like we're to the point where we're not as excited about every single completion that he makes. I remember like back at the beginning of training camp, every completion he made was discussed, who it was to, what route they ran, all kinds of stuff. Now it's just kind of like, yeah, he just had another day where he completed the majority of his passes. He was accurate, making the right decisions. It's kind of gotten to the point where we're not even excited about it anymore. It's kind of the expectation, and we just can't wait to see if he can go out there in the regular season and do the same thing, if it translates from just practice, joint practices, and preseason games to actual regular season games against good teams. But we do have one last play where Jaden Daniels throws a really nice ball to Terry McLaurin right here. And then before we leave the quarterback part of this video, Trace McSorley also dropped a nice ball. Shouts out to Mitch Tisler for this clip. A nice ball right in the bucket. So maybe he's starting to grow. Maybe he's showing some flashes. I don't think it's going to be enough for him to make the final 53-man roster at all. But this is a guy that came in very raw, very rusty. And no wonder he looked as bad as he did, especially in the beginning of that preseason game against the Dolphins. But now he's starting to heat up. Now moving on to the running backs. Cliff Kingsbury said that he's really excited about the running backs and said that Austin Eckler has been excellent. He said, quote, Austin Eckler has been fantastic. There was a narrative out there that he had lost a step, and that couldn't be further from the truth, unquote. That's coming from the offensive coordinator himself, and that makes me very happy to hear. And even when you're seeing highlights of Austin Eckler, he does look like he's just as explosive as he's always been. I've seen clips of him for the Chargers like last year and things like that, getting caught from behind. He's never been the fastest receiver, but maybe he's found the fountain of youth, like I've been saying throughout the entire training camp, and Cliff Kingsbury just seemed to confirm that. Also, in practice yesterday, later on in the day, Austin Eckler showed off his speed by catching a wide open pass from Jaden Daniels on the right side of the field. The play was blown dead though, but Austin Eckler finished by running all the way into the end zone anyway, and there weren't any defenders around to stop him. So that's a guy giving it his 100% all. Cliff Kingsbury also said that Brian Robinson is very clearly a running back one and is thrilled where he is. That's very important. That's very interesting news right there. And then also, after practice, Austin Eckler was still working by himself, nobody around, just pure work ethic, a veteran, a proven veteran, one of the more proven guys on the team. And he's even taking time after the final practice of the training camp for the 2024 Washington Commanders offseason to just work on things by himself. Then moving on to wide receiver, as you can see on this clip right here, you have Terry McLaurin, Luke McCaffrey, and De'Ami Brown going through some early drills to begin yesterday's practice. Shouts out to Sam 48 for this clip, and shouts out to NBC4 Sports for a clip right here provided that basically just a view of what this wide receiver group looks like without Jahan Dotson out there. And it's interesting. It's definitely a different look, man. I'm not gonna lie. Also, shouts out to Scott Abraham for pointing this out. In this clip that you're seeing right now, the Commanders wide receiver group is working on taking handoffs during today's practice. So they're trying to give everybody the Curtis Samuel, Deebo Samuel treatment. I like that, man. Let's see who's the best at it and let it stick. We can start to add that into the offense, add another wrinkle to the offense the defenses have to worry about. And then also moving on, shouts out to Linnell Willingham, because in yesterday's practice, apparently Luke McCaffrey got the first crack at being the third wide receiver with the first team. He did give a disclaimer though that they rotate, but Luke McCaffrey was given the first opportunity when it's Jaden Daniels and all of the starters. When it was Terry McLaurin, I'm assuming De'Ami Brown was wide receiver 2, because that seems pretty clear cut at this point. They let Luke McCaffrey get the first shot at wide receiver 3 to basically replace Jahan Dotson. I thought that was pretty interesting. Also, Scott Abraham pointed out the fact that maybe the growth and development of Luke McCaffrey could be a big reason as to why they felt comfortable trading away Jahan Dotson. Maybe they feel like they have their answer in Luke McCaffrey, but we're going to talk about pretty soon why that may not necessarily be true. But also, you have Dyami Brown in this clip right here provided by Scott Abraham. Shouts out to him for this. And I mean, now we got to see, is Dyami Brown like really the answer at wide receiver 2? I can't wait to see him in the regular season to see if that's a real thing. And then in this clip right here, you have Kazmir Allen out there with the running backs. Like, if you're looking right now, shouts out to Ben Standig for this. On their 4th practice field, you have the running backs all working on drills. Kazmir Allen is out there with those guys. Now, again, I mentioned earlier that a lot of the receivers were working and doing some running back handoff stuff, but this is different. Kazmir Allen was literally with the running backs at a certain point in practice today. And Cliff Kingsbury even talked about him. Again, Kazmir Allen has been working with the running backs lately. Cliff Kingsbury said about Kazmir Allen, quote, "He's a guy. I'm not comparing, but similar to role to Debo, explosive guy," unquote. So Cliff Kingsbury thinks very highly of Kazmir Allen, even though he was pretty disappointed in that Dolphins preseason game. I believe he even had a fumble in it while trying to be utilizing the Debo Samuel-like role. And so we'll see where that goes. Maybe he's just a little growing pains right now because maybe that's something new to him. And Cliff Kingsbury's pretty high on his explosivity. We'll see where that goes. Washington, again, shouts out to Ben Standig for this one as well. Washington began working Kazmir Allen at running back last week. Cliff Kingsbury mentions the reporters that his explosive traits remind him of a Debo Samuel type of player. The Commanders are looking for a way to basically keep Kazmir Allen on the roster. Whether he takes advantage of it is the question. He had that fumble last week against the Dolphins in that preseason game, just to confirm. And then before we get up out of here, John Comm said himself that Luke McCaffrey has not emerged as a top 4 receiver. So we were giving him looks to see if he was wide receiver 3. He's not even top 4 right now, which makes me question who's the top 4. Of course, Terry McLaurin, Dyami Brown, your obvious 2. After that, I guess it's Olamide Zaccheaus is 3. And then I guess Jamison Crowder as 4. I mean, I'm rooting for Bryson Tremaine, and you're hearing that they're trying to give Kazmir Allen as many opportunities as he possibly can to try to show he can make this team. I doubt they're talking about Martavis Bryant or Mitchell Tinsley, any of those guys. So I'm assuming that's maybe the 4, but that's interesting that Luke McCaffrey right now isn't even wide receiver 4 right now. Maybe it's going to take him a little bit more time to develop than we originally thought, but we'll see where that goes, man. Now moving on to tight end. Like I mentioned earlier, Zach Ertz's connection with Jaden Daniels is as strong as ever, like you saw in that clip for that touchdown, and like we described, it had the entire offense hype, but that's expected. But speaking of not necessarily expected was the fact that, again, Samuel Cosmi did a cartwheel off of that. Now, tight end wise, my only questions right now, are we going to keep 3 or 4? Is Cole Turner showing enough to where you keep 4 tight ends instead of 3, which takes away a roster spot from another position group that you can keep an additional player for? We already know Zach Ertz, Ben Sinnott, and John Bates are your guaranteed top 3 tight ends. After that is somewhat of a drop-off, even though Cole Turner has gotten way better with blocking than I really ever expected him to get at his career, especially this soon. So the blocking has improved mightily. There's dual threat tight end ability there, but you got to stop dropping passes that lead to interceptions like you did to Jaden Daniels in that joint practice against the Jets, I believe it was, and then the Dolphins actually, and then the Dolphins preseason game a couple of days later, same thing. You allow an interception to happen to Trace McSorley because the ball went through your hands. Now moving on to the defensive side of the ball, starting with the defensive line. Now granted, again, some of the veterans have been sitting out, but at a certain point in practice, Linnell pointed out the fact that yesterday in practice, Pollard was the 3rd defensive tackle out there in a Washington 5-man front out there with the first team defense, like Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvo, and those guys out there. The Pollard kid was out there as the 3rd defensive tackle. I thought that's pretty interesting. They're trying to give that guy as many opportunities to show that he could do what he can do. Also, at a certain point, another interesting thing, during 11-on-11 goal line drills, starters are out there. Jamin Davis was your right defensive end. Again, some of the veterans are not out there playing right now, not participating in the team drills, but that's still very important to note. The fact that he even got ahead of KJ Henry and Javonte Jean-Baptiste as far as the depth chart goes, at least for that opportunity. I'm not sure if that necessarily means that Jamin Davis is ahead of them in the depth chart, but at least they're giving him opportunities to show what he can do. And then also, shouts out to Scott Abraham for this clip, because this is just showing you an example as to why Dante Fowler is the situational pass rush specialist that he is. And then moving on to linebacker, of course, this is mostly just going to be Frank Frankie Louvu love, per usual. Red zone 11-on-11 drills with the starters out there. Jeremy Reeves had a good breakup against a Jaden Daniels pass. That's notewortly. But also, Frankie Louvu, right afterwards, picked off Jeff Driscoll. So there you go there. Shouts out to Zach Selby. He said it's become expected for Frankie Louvu to come down with a big play in every practice, basically, at this point. He managed to grab an interception from Jeff Driscoll today, which earned a few cheers from the defense. But that wasn't just it. Later on, he ended up one of the last plays of practice. Frankie Louvu tipped the pass at the line of scrimmage and caught it for an interception as well. And of course, the defense went ballistic. And if you want to see those two clips right here, here are both of them. I mean, that guy is a menace, dog. I mean, it's whoo. I'm really afraid for other teams' offenses with how good Frankie Louvu looks. Between him and Mike Sainristil, man, Lord had mercy. And then also, before we leave the linebacker group, shouts out to Bobby Wagner in his interview with reporters after practice, I believe today. I love the relationship that Jaden Daniels has with a lot of the leaders on this team. Well, really everybody on this team, but especially the leaders like Bobby Wagner. Because at the end of the last training camp practice today, Bobby Wagner was interviewed and was asked about Jaden Daniels specifically. And he said that Jaden Daniels talks a lot of trash all of the time. And he even said that Jaden Daniels says that he's good at basketball, but he's actually not. And then Bobby Wagner even went on to say that he would beat him in a basketball game. And I love it, man. I love this type of trash talk. I love this type of camaraderie. Love the fact that they keep it 100 with each other. It's not all nicey nice guy and things like that. They are talking trash. And it seems like Jaden Daniels is the catalyst for a lot of it. I believe even Mike Sainristil said that Jaden Daniels talks trash every day. I know it was Jahan Dotson that said something to the extent of like Jaden Daniels reminds him that Penn State sucks almost every day in practice at some point. Like he could pretty much bet on it. And I just love that constant barrage of just trash talking for absolutely no reason. Unwarranted, unprovoked, just trash talk. I'm learning to love Jaden Daniels even more than I originally thought before. I wanted us to draft him in the draft, but now that I'm starting to see his real personality side of things from other players talking about him, love it. Of course, when he's in front of the media, in front of the cameras and microphones himself, you're not going to see that side of him. But from what the players are saying, this sounds like my type of quarterback, like a Chad Ochocinco at quarterback. That's all I needed to hear. He's already my favorite player on the team. Now moving on to cornerback. Joe Witt Jr. has some really high praise for rookie cornerback Mike Sainristil. He acknowledged the fact that he has some inside-outside versatility. And watching his tape, I was like, I know he could be a dominant, arguably the best slot corner in the NFL type of slot corner. I think he has that level of potential. I think he could even make a Pro Bowl as a rookie. I'm that high on him as a slot corner. But the outside cornerback position, looking at his tape from Michigan, I wasn't necessarily sure about that, especially with how small he is. But Joe Witt Jr. said that they've even been working Mike Sainristil at outside corner in 2 corner looks. So we're not talking about an extra corner on the field. We're talking about 2 outside corners on the field at once, and he's one of those outside corners in practices at times. Joe Witt Jr. also noted to reporters that Mike Sainristil, Washington's projected slot, has played more lately outside in 2 cornerback sets, and Sainristil may already be the Commanders' best corner, and Ben Standig said that he may even drop the May. He actually is one of the best corners on the team, both inside and outside. I already knew inside, but now outside as well is scary business. Also, shouts out to We Want Dallas for this, because I agree. A lot of the offseason talk and concern about the prospect of St. Juste and Forbes as the starting corners right now going on. And with it being August 23rd, and it's possibly neither will start, which is really interesting. Both guys from the previous regime. Michael Davis was brought in as a free agent. Mike Sainristil was brought in as a draft pick. Again, Emmanuel Forbes and Benjamin St. Juste were already here when Dan Quinn and Adam Peters took over the team. We Want Dallas brought up the fact that there's a very real chance that Sainristil and Michael Davis are your cornerback 1s and 2s come week 1. Outside corners. That's a crazy scenario. That's a great thing and part of Michael Davis and Mike Sainristil stepping up to the plate. But that it does make you look at Emmanuel Forbes and Benjamin St. Juste funny. But I mean, it really shouldn't be that big of a surprise with how Emmanuel Forbes gave up that touchdown against a Jets backup wide receiver in that first preseason game. And then Benjamin St. Juste turned around and did the same thing against a Dolphins backup receiver in that second preseason game. Joe Wood Jr. also said that he's been impressed with Mike Sainristil and emphasized that he doesn't make the same mistake twice, and that is music to my ears, because that is the same exact thing that we heard about Cameron Curl coming out as a 7th round rookie in his first season with the Commanders. And now just imagine a guy that doesn't make the same mistake twice like Cameron Curl, but he's also a freak athlete in a 2nd rounder's body. Cameron Curl is not a great athlete, and he was a 7th round pick for a reason, you could argue. Mike Sainristil was a definitive 2nd round pick. Some people felt like he should have gone in the 1st round, freak athlete, and he has that same doesn't make the same mistakes twice thing going on as Cameron Curl. So that basically means he's just an even higher ceiling, potentially better version of Cameron Curl, faster, quicker, all of that. I'm very excited. Joe Wood Jr. did say that he had a vote of confidence for Emmanuel Forbes and Benjamin St-Juste, though. He says that it's on him to teach them better when it comes to the plays that they've given up. So he's taking the blame for what we've seen from Emmanuel Forbes and Benjamin St-Juste, even though, shouts out to Joe Wood Jr. for being a good coach and doing what he's supposed to do there. But we've seen Mike Sainristil and Michael Davis not get beat the way those guys have been beaten. The coaching that you're doing is working for those guys, but we'll see. But again, I feel like Emmanuel Forbes has gotten way more hate than he deserves this offseason. I feel like he worked his way back to looking pretty good towards the end of that Jets joint practice. Nobody talks about the fact that he actually got some pass breakups against Garrett Wilson and even an interception. People just completely forget about that. They only acknowledge the times he got cooked. But he was kind of going back and forth with them, especially towards the end of practice. And then, even in that preseason game where he gave up the touchdown, every other rep he got, he looked pretty good. And then in that second preseason game, I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all forgot he was even on the field because he was just locking up everybody that he was covering, and the ball was just never thrown his way. So don't sleep on Emmanuel Forbes, though. Also, there was a heavy emphasis on outside runs and passes yesterday in practice, said by Zach Selby. Near the end of practice, Benjamin St-Juste did a good job of sealing off the sideline against Brian Robinson, who was forced to turn back inside to take a few hits from St-Juste's teammates who rallied to the play. So Benjamin St-Juste improving as a run defender, that's going to be very important. Now moving on to safety again, like I mentioned earlier, Jeremy Reeves had a really good pass breakup against Jaden Daniels, but in the same practice, later on in that same practice, he had a pass breakup against Jeff Driscoll as well. So he was missing tackles in these past 2 preseason games, which is not a good look, but he's out here making plays in coverage, and I still feel like I'm pretty confident in the fact that he'll make the team, just as the very least as a special teams ace. I mean, he's all pro Revo for a reason, but now the fact that he's also making plays as a safety, we'll see. Now, also, shouts out to my boy Zach Selby, because we can't go a video without talking about my boy Tyler Owens. So I'm happy to see that he talked about him in his article that he wrote up after yesterday's practice. He said Tyler Owens continues to show up in camp as he had a pass breakup in the end zone, and Owens, an undrafted free agent from Texas Tech, is considered by many to be a strong candidate for a roster spot, and another solid performance against the Patriots in the 3rd preseason game like he's had the first 2 could pretty much seal things up for him and pretty much make him a roster lock, which is music to my ears and it brings tears to my eyes that my boy Tyler Owens, it looks like he actually will make this roster, and I felt like it was a dream. I felt like it was pretty far-fetched when I initially said that he could, all the way back when we first picked him up as a drafted free agent, or even just going back to like March when I was mocking him to us in my mock drafts leading up to the draft. I just would have never thought that we'd be to this point where he was already this far ahead in his development. He's exceeded all of my expectations, and I'm very happy, man. Congratulations. I really hope he makes this team. A lot of people are saying that he definitely will make this team, but I guess I'm just so emotionally attached to his greatness that I'm afraid to put my heart out there yet and say that he will for sure. I'm just going to keep saying I hope until I see it on Tuesday. Now moving on to special teams, the Commanders practice ended yesterday with a few field goal attempts, but since they didn't have a kicker there yet, because the York trade did not actually go all the way through yet by the time we practiced yesterday, so they had Tressway catching snaps with the equipment guys pretending to kick, and so we officially got K York out there today in practice though, which was pretty cool. And I'm just really hoping that he is finally the solution at kicker, man. I'm really hoping, because we need one bad. And then the last thing I have to say about special teams is I can't wait to see who ends up actually being our starting punt returner right now, because I'm leaning towards Jamison Crowder, but Olamide Zaccheaus showed us a few good things. Luke McCaffrey, they put him out there in the preseason game against the Dolphins, even though I don't think he ever got a chance to actually return one, because their punter was so bad he kept kicking it out of bounds, so we couldn't even evaluate our returner competition the way that we wanted to, but that is what it is. But we have some strong competition out there. Don't forget, Casmer Allen, they're doing everything that they can to give him a reason to make this roster. They clearly are really really rooting for this guy. They're even trying to put him in a Debo Samuel-like role, which I did not expect. And of course, he's also competing for starting punt returner as well. We'll see where that goes. And then before we get up out of here, I have a few random updates as well. Shouts out to my boy Carl Diesel on Twitter at Rigo70Chip at Carl_Diesel. He said, I don't care what Adam Peters does. At least we ain't got to hear allegations and scandals. I completely agree. Feel how you want to feel about the Jahan Dotson situation, but that was handled with a lot of class. There wasn't a bunch of drama leading up to it like that. We were starting to think there was, but we were hearing whispers and things like that, but nothing ever got out of hand. Also, just to let you know, Jahan Dotson will wear number 87 for the Eagles, and ew, that's ugly, man. That is really ugly. Also, shouts out to JP Finley for pointing this out. This is great. The Commanders are working with Metro to keep service open late, even for preseason games. Metro is offering extended service for the Sunday night Commanders game against the Patriots. So shouts out to them, man, because they don't have to necessarily do that. And so they're planning on letting it run even till after 12 a.m. That's pretty cool. And I'm assuming they probably will do the same thing for some night games during the regular season as well. Shouts out to the city of DC for that one. And then Patriots coach Gerard Mayo, like I mentioned earlier, said that Jacoby Brissett will start their final preseason game. It sounds like he's still the projected starter as of today, but you never know. Drake May can go out there and show us something, maybe steal that starting spot from Jacoby Brissett. But either way, both of those guys will go out there and play in that final preseason game. So typically, most teams in these final preseason games will not play their starters. For some reason, the Panthers are sending Bryce Young out there for the first time all preseason in the third one, and then the Patriots are playing some of their starters. At least they're starting 2 quarterbacks, and like I said earlier, that's going to be good so we can see what some of these backups that are fighting for roster spots against each other can do against some starting caliber guys in this preseason game, the final one. So I'm really happy that they will get to play against both Jacoby Brissett and Drake May, because first, also on top of everything, those are 2 completely different style of quarterbacks. So that's going to be a good challenge for a lot of our backup guys fighting to make one of these last few spots. Again, Dan Quinn said it's probably like less than 10 that are out for grabs. Can't wait to see and evaluate what's going on there as I live stream that Sunday night for y'all. Make sure y'all pull up for that. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in the video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, man. I really appreciate y'all as always, man. Make sure you do not leave this video without stiff arming that like button, leaving a like, and also let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video, especially like the Brandon Ayuk situation with the are we pursuing him or not. Let me know how you feel about the Jahan Dotson situation after you had like a couple of like a day to kind of let it soak in and see how you really feel about it and not have an emotional reaction, but more of like a logical one. Let me know how you feel about Brian Robinson being RB1, according to Cliff Kingsbury over Austin Eckler. Let me know how you feel about Luke McCaffrey apparently being a disappointment to the coaching staff right now. They were hoping he could step up, but apparently he hasn't yet. Let me know how you feel about Frankie Louvu potentially being the best player on this entire defense, and Mike Sainristil playing at outside corner and maybe even has the chance to be one of our starting outside corners. I am shocked by that, but let me know how y'all feel about all of that, of course, and I really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.